All right. So we're here today with Brady.
Hello.
Nice to meet you, Brady.
Nice to meet you, Gary.
Yeah. So Brady was good enough to fill out one of these questionnaires and then scanned it and emailed it back to me. What would you like to talk about today?
What would I like to talk about?
Yes.
Well, this is your house, sir.
Yeah, well, so the idea here, of course, is to discuss a belief that you hold.
Oh, a belief that I hold.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I wasn't aware. My friend just sort of handed me the questionnaire last night and said, fill this out. And I said, okay.
Oh.
And I did it, and I sent it off because, I suppose I found the whole idea interesting, but I didn't know I was supposed to choose.
Well, I mean, it's entirely up to you.
Yeah.
I mean, so, the idea here is epistemology is how do we know what we know, right?
Right.
And are the reasons that we have for the things we believe justified?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the questionnaire was sort of a dipping the toe in, as it were, to kind of give you a sense of what sort of discussion this might be. So. So typically, a person comes and, they have a belief. It could be a God belief. It could be, they believe in astrology or some political stance. And so it's about, a little bit of self-exploration using the Socratic method.
Okay. Yes.
So just a matter of my asking probing questions.
Right. Yeah.
To give you a chance to sort of, unpack a belief you might have and the reasons that you get there.
Okay. I don't know that I kind of feel like I'm put on the spot now because.
Well, is there something here that we could just? Talk about
for me,
here,
everything just sort of exists on a scale of possibility, and I'm not particularly attached to any of my beliefs. I think. What would be the point in that? So, I know. I don't have any particularly strong religious beliefs, or really about anything that's really, I suppose, meaningful in that realm.
Okay.
I entertain ideas.
Okay. What kind of ideas?
Well. One interesting one that I have been entertaining is this idea of like the Eastern sort of idea of God, of the God within versus the Western idea of God as something external.
Okay.
Maybe that's an interesting one.
Sure, absolutely.
To jump into.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you define what you mean by the Eastern God of within?
Yeah. So as I understand it, sort of the Eastern idea of God is it's not something that's outside of you. It's something that you're a part of, right?
Okay.
So you're rather like say God is the tree and you're a branch on that tree or something like that, as opposed to like some dictatorial monarch sitting up in the sky.
So not so much the Christian style God, but something Zen-like or something.
Well, I suppose so. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So so this is an interest of yours. Have you looked into it? What is the attraction?
The attraction it just seems to make more sense.
Okay.
And everybody sort of, I think everyone sort of has these burning questions of like who we are, where we come from, where we're going inside of them, and I think this offers an elegant solution to some of those questions.
Okay, so what do you think it adds?
What do I think it adds?
Right.
I just think it's the idea that makes the most sense.
Okay, so what about there just not being a God? Or like what pulls you in the direction that there is any kind of God, as opposed to we're just here?
Well, it's a matter of definitions,
Okay.
right? So if you say that God is some external, omnipotent, omniscient force, then you can sort of argue whether God exists or not. But if you change your definition of God to something like all that there is, including me and you and everything we perceive, then it's a little bit hard to argue against the existence of something like that.
How would you go about determining that it does in fact exist?
Well, how do we know we exist or anything we experience exists? If we say that that our existence is in fact real, then by our definition of this bigger idea of God, then that must exist as well.
Oh, why is that?
It's just a matter of definitions.
So I guess I'm not clear what you mean by that. Like, if on the one hand it is a hard thing to know that we exist,
Mm-hmm.
adding another level
Mm-hmm.
of mystery, like what does that actually solve? What does that help you understand better?
No, I'm just sort of saying, like, if we take our definition of God as sort of like just everything,
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we exist, then under that definition, God must exist as well.
I'm not sure that I follow that. Like how does the one necessitate the other?
Because, well, I guess the assumption is that God is greater, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, sort of, you could say that God is the ground of all being, right?
Okay.
So God is sort of like that which allows everything else to exist, right?
Okay. How would you go about testing whether that was true or not? I mean, outside of making the assumption that God exists and then putting everything on top of that,
Yeah.
how do you get to the assumption?
How do you get to the assumption?
Yeah. How do you get to the assumption that God exists? Because I think that's what you're kind of saying, is that the mystery of who we are is answered by the mystery of God, but you can't answer where you get to God or how you got to God.
Well, I mean, you have to verify it by experience.
Okay.
I mean,
How
that's
do you
the
do
only
that?
way you verify anything.
So how do you verify God? Through experience.
Well, usually it's through meditation, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Some people have powerful experiences on drugs like ayahuasca or
sure.
other psychedelic.
But are these are those things necessarily pointing to the existence of a God, or could those experiences? I mean, I've done drugs in the past. I've tried LSD and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and had some pretty powerful experiences.
Yeah.
But I've never come out of them thinking that I had an experience of a necessary entity like a God. You know what I mean? These. My experience has been that they mess with my brain.
Yeah.
They don't mess with reality,
Yeah.
right? They just mess with my perception of reality.
So that's interesting to me, is just the sort of demarcation of experience and reality, right? As if there's a difference. Now, I don't think there's a difference between experience and reality. And I don't understand why people take that leap and assume that there is. So people who, I mean, would you agree that
different people experience the world in different ways?
Yeah, I would assume so. I mean, I can only ever experience what I experience.
Sure.
But, if I'm 6'2", and so I experience the world from looking up here, and if someone's 5'2", they
Sure.
experience the world from looking here.
Right,
It's clearly,
right. So perspective
yeah,
is different.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what you meant then by, the reality and experience as being...
Yeah, I mean, like all I can, like I can only assume, like another person's experience is different from mine. But that very assumption happens within the sphere of my own experience.
Okay.
Right. So that's all I can ever verify is my own experience.
But can you compare experiences with other people's perceptions of the real world in order to determine what is more likely to be true or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, whatever you do, everything has to reduce down into your own experience, right? You can't experience someone else's experience, because even if you could, that would become your experience.
Okay. But how does that affect what is real and what is true?
How does that? Well, I mean, to
Maybe
me, it just suggests that what's real is your experience. I mean, there's nothing outside of your experience, right? So if anything is real, it has to be within your experience.
But does reality exist independent of you?
No,
Oh, is that right?
of course.
Okay. So if once you're gone, then the world is gone? Is
Yeah.
that it? Oh, okay. Interesting.
I mean, from my perspective, it is, right.
Okay.
Like I can imagine that it continues on,
Okay.
but that imagining happens within my experience, right? So, like, all I know, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but all I know is my experience, right?
Sure. Okay.
So I think in a very real way, when I'm, if I'm to blink out of existence, from my perspective, reality ends.
Of course. Yeah. It's like turning off the light.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, how does this relate to a belief then in a God?
Well, that's a big question. I don't know. Can you break that down, maybe?
Well, let me see. So you're saying that reality is just really a matter of what you experience, right? That reality
Yeah.
doesn't exist independent of you as an experiencer?
Of course not. How could it?
Well, I don't know. That's an interesting question. Like, why?
Nothing exists outside of experience.
Okay.
Show me anything that exists outside of experience. Just show me it. Demonstrate it.
I think we might be talking past each other, but I'm just wondering if there's an actual real world, a world that you and I can agree is true and exists, independent of how well we perceive it. For instance, if a person's blind, they perceive the world in a different way.
Yeah.
But certainly a table is a table, independent of their ability to perceive it.
Okay. But
Would you agree?
I suppose so, but let's look at the table. Like, a table to us is something that's hard, right? And it's like an object that I can't put my hand through, right?
Right.
But what about if I'm an electron, right? Like, if I'm an electron, it's not hard. It's not an impassable surface, right? So, I mean, and then it's just, I read somewhere sometime that, like, our brains are only processing like 10% of all of the information that's coming through our eyes, right? So to me, it's like, I don't know what's out there, right? Like, my experience of the world is just a reflection of my own nervous system, right?
Okay.
But I mean, what's out there, it's just it's objectively, is probably unfathomable
Okay.
to me.
Yeah,
Right?
right. That's
You know
a
what I mean?
tough word to get your
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Now, given that,
Yeah.
where do you get the idea that that a God exists?
Well, God, it's just a word to communicate an idea, right?
Okay.
So if we can sort of imagine, like if we can imagine an ultimate reality that's greater than ourselves, like it's useful to have a word for that, right?
Okay.
You know, and we could say God, or we could say, I don't know, the universe, or existence itself, or whatever. But,
Okay.
you know, God is just as good a word as any, I suppose.
Okay. But, I think in a lot of people's minds, God implies, a being or a sense of a higher consciousness or something like that,
Yeah.
which is different than saying the universe.
Yeah.
So if you're using God as a placeholder for an idea, what is the idea for which that acts as a placeholder?
Well, yeah, I mean, just for me, I can't speak to what other people believe.
No, of course.
But for me, it's everything, you know? It's the infinite, it's the indescribable, you know?
What influence do you think that has on our reality?
I think you might have to be a little bit more specific with that one.
Well, I mean, if God is this idea of consciousness, or I guess I'm not very clear on.
I mean,
Because you're saying it's everything.
I think a better word than consciousness might be awareness, because consciousness, to me, implies some sort of reflexive quality, like
Okay.
aware of oneself, right?
Okay.
But awareness is just you're aware, but not necessarily of yourself. So I think that might be, just to make things simple,
Okay.
just to say, to frame God as awareness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Independent of us?
Yeah, I mean, like, what makes a person, right? It's
Uh-huh.
sort of, your body and your thoughts, right?
Okay.
And your sensations.
Yeah.
And sort of, but I think, you take all of that away, take away all of our memories, all of our ideas, all of our beliefs, take away our bodies, and what do you have left, right?
What?
Just awareness.
Oh.
Yeah.
So awareness is independent of our brains, for instance?
Now that's that's the $1 million question, right? It's like, is this a mind first universe, or is it a matter first universe?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which one is greater, mind or matter? What precipitates the other? And I think Western society is very much entrenched in this idea of matter is the greater thing, right? Consciousness is just a byproduct, or even we'll say awareness is a byproduct of like matter and neurochemical reactions and all that. But I'm inclined to believe otherwise.
Okay.
So
what compels you to believe otherwise? Like, what is the, what's the reason you're getting there?
It just seems to me that whatever it doesn't seem to me. It's obvious to me that whatever I experience is within this awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like it requires my brain to sort of make shapes out of everything,
Okay.
to have an experience as a human being, but it's like that awareness is greater, right? It's like all of this stuff is happening on the on just the ground of awareness, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So your awareness is...
But I shouldn't say it's my awareness.
Okay.
Because, like, if I say it's my awareness, that's personal, right?
Okay.
So what I sort of suspect is that there's just this impersonal awareness, which we can call God, if we like, and sort of out of that sort of endless branches that we call like individual people.
Okay. What sort of evidence supports what you're thinking there about that?
It just seems to me like it's a tautology, right? It's like what can exist without awareness, right?
Well, does a table have awareness?
I don't know.
How would
Some
you be
people
able to
would
test
say
that?
It does.
How would you be able to test that in order to support your
That's a good question,
right.
and I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that something you are interested in discovering? I mean, you know.
Yeah,
Right,
absolutely,
right.
I would. Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, just this idea that, you know, a table has awareness, that may seem like total nonsense, but like all primitive cultures basically believe that. It's just this idea of animism, right? You know, you see that in primitive cultures from around the globe, and I think that's fascinating.
So, okay, and I agree. I've certainly read a number of books where, Joseph Campbell, for instance, he talks about myths and how cultures and societies all throughout history have had myths and God beliefs and all that kind of stuff. Does it seem to you that we are as sort of certain of our beliefs in those things as they were in the past?
Yes and no, because it seems to me like when you get into mythology and that sort of stuff, it's just a way to sort of understand ourselves, right? Human qualities, you know, it's like you have a god of war or a god of love or, you know, a god of whatever. It's just a way to sort of explore those ideas within our experience, right? Like today we don't need to have gods to talk about that, you know? It's just
right.
We've sort of cut them out and we just sort of
because
we're able to just talk about them as abstracts.
Sure.
But
gotcha.
maybe to a more primitive mind it was necessary to anthropomorphize them. I don't know. Right.
Right. So what about this current manifestation of what you believe God to be?
Yeah.
Is there a chance that it is just a more sophisticated way of looking at the world than it used to be, like when people believed in Thor? Because back at a time there were people that really believed that Thor existed as an entity, right?
Probably people believe Thor exists as an entity now.
I'm sure they do. Not enough Marvel comics, eh?
Right. Yeah.
But I guess I'm just trying to get to where your certainty about your idea of God, where that really rests.
It's not really certainty.
Okay.
But it's just what makes sense to me.
Okay.
Like I can't see how anything could exist without sort of this awareness being the fundamental base of it all.
Okay. If you could, would that reduce your confidence in the idea that there's an underlying awareness independent of you?
Yeah. So by definition.
Yeah. So what would it take?
What would it take?
What kind of evidence would you need in order to dissuade you from the idea of awareness?
I can't fathom. I mean, that's a great question, but I can't fathom what that would be. I don't know if it's possible to have something that would do that, just by the very nature of reality.
But if something did happen,
Yeah.
that was a sort of a demonstration that
Right.
this idea of awareness did not in fact exist,
Yeah.
you would be willing
Yeah,
to
but how
change.
but how could that happen, right? I mean, what?
I-
whatever thing that
There-
could possibly be,
Right.
that would have to happen within the sphere of awareness, right? I mean, the only thing that could dissuade me would be a sort of non-awareness event.
Okay.
And if that would happen, there wouldn't be any me to experience it. So how could I use that as a proof?
But
So
I
it's
think
a
you've been
sticky
talking about
situation.
two layers of awareness: a universal awareness and your awareness. How does your
Okay,
awareness
yeah.
interact with this underlying level of awareness, such that you know it exists?
I mean, okay, just as sort of an idea, right? Fundamentally, it's just an idea,
Right.
right? I mean, it's just the way of trying to understand reality.
So what if you took away the idea of an underlying awareness
Yeah.
and just went with your awareness? How would that change the way you interact with the world?
And just went with my awareness.
Yeah. If you I mean, you think about it.
Yeah,
People at one time believed in Thor.
right.
And then a person went from believing in Thor to not believing in Thor.
Sure.
There was something that happened
Yeah,
that, enlightened him, so to speak,
okay.
to the reality that Thor does not exist as an
Okay.
entity.
Okay, yeah.
So is that something that is possible for
So that
for
would
happening with
probably
you?
be the Christianization of the Nordic people, which
could be, right?
Which made that transition.
Yeah. But, for instance, there are people who have been raised as, in different religious cultures
Yeah.
to become non-believers.
Yeah.
So there's something that transitions in a person, so they move from belief to non-belief.
Yeah,
Or change beliefs.
yeah,
So there is something that happens that allows people to
yeah.
make these changes.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I'm asking you is what would a change like that for you actually have? What kind of an effect would that have?
Okay,
If you just
If-
remove this idea of underlying awareness,
if that was just gone somehow,
gone somehow,
Yeah.
how would that affect your world?
I think I'd go completely nuts.
Really?
Yeah.
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 Why? What kind of meaning does that give that it's that important? Just out of curiosity,
Well, I mean, that would be like saying you don't exist.
I don't know. Would
And
it?
it's like, and then I'd be caught in this loop of how does something that doesn't exist realize that it doesn't exist, and just sort of permutations of that.
Yeah. Huh. How many? Just as a question, because talking about awareness, the fact that you have awareness is that kind of a mystery that is leading you to this other belief about awareness?
What other belief about awareness?
Well, you have this belief of an underlying awareness, which
I
we
mean,
might
is it
like
really
to
belief? Is it really a belief, though? I mean, like when we get down to brass tacks, could we be having this conversation without it?
Without what?
Without awareness?
But maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm not understanding correctly, but I thought you were talking about two different kinds of awareness.
Okay.
A universal awareness,
Yeah.
and then a personal
Okay,
awareness.
so so we could say awareness, and then we could say consciousness, right?
Okay.
Just to simplify it. So,
Okay.
we could say like consciousness to talk about personal identity. Right?
Okay.
if that helps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. So is there a mystery about consciousness that leads you to a belief in this underlying awareness?
Yeah, I suppose there must be.
Okay, I'm just wondering what's bringing you there. That's that's what I'm trying to get to.
I mean, yeah, probably just that really fundamental human drive to sort of know who or what we are and where we're coming from and where we're going, you know, and what we're doing here. You know.
Now, is not knowing the answer to those questions what brings you to believe in this underlying awareness?
No.
Okay.
No. It's a tautology.
Well, tautology is a circular argument, right?
Well, it's an argument in which it proves itself. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there can't be an untrue answer to it, right? It's something that is true in and of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What's an example of that?
Oh gosh. My internet doesn't work, but I don't want to try to come up with a really bad example.
Okay.
But I wish I was connected to an internet. I wish I could just pull up a bunch of sort of classical
examples of tautologies.
Yeah. Yeah, something that's always true. You know. I don't know, like for example. If I choose to go outside, or if I choose to stay inside, I will either be inside or outside.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's not the most elegant example.
Okay.
But, yeah.
What about only a God could create a universe? The universe exists, therefore God exists. That's a tautology.
Yeah.
It's an attempt to explain
something. But that's a false premise.
It is a false premise, right? But it's a tautology.
Right. Okay. So there we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So usually explanations that are used to explain themselves are actually not valid arguments.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So tautologies aren't generally considered a valid argument.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well. Sure, but I mean, it depends on the assumption, right?
Okay. So, so with respect to this awareness, what is the assumption?
That everything is built upon it.
Okay. Where does your consciousness come from?
So, following the line we've been following, my consciousness comes from this awareness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you're familiar with emergent properties?
No.
Okay. So water has a property of wetness, right? So how many molecules of water do you need to have together at one time in order to have the property of awareness, or a property of wetness?
Yeah, I don't know.
You see, like wetness is an emergent property of molecules of water.
Right.
Okay. So, and there's a point at which, like, a single molecule of water does not have the property of wetness, right? So, could it be that consciousness is just an emergent property of neurophysical processes that go on in our brain?
Sort of. You know, when I think about it, it becomes kind of a chicken or an egg kind of thing, right? Because if there's no one to notice the sorry, what did you say? The
neurophysical processes. of the brain.
neurophysical process.
Yeah.
So if there's no one to notice the neurophysical processes, is it really happening? Right? So to me, it makes me think of the old Kangon. If a tree falls in the forest, then there's no one there
To hear it, does it make a
Does it
sound?
make a sound?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But how does that change the reality of what it may actually be? Like if awareness is, or consciousness
Yeah.
is an emergent property of the brain,
Mm-hmm.
how does that affect the idea that there is an underlying awareness or universal awareness? If it could be demonstrated
Mm-hmm.
that consciousness is, in fact, an emergent property of the brain,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's purely a physical.
Consciousness, I agree, is an emergent property of the brain.
Okay.
Awareness, I don't believe.
Okay, so now you're making a distinction between consciousness and awareness.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what is that distinction?
Oh, we made that distinction a little while ago. So awareness would just be like just being itself, right? It's something
Okay.
like that. So awareness is awareness, and consciousness is self-awareness. Right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay, what would you characterize dogs and cats? Are they aware? Are they conscious?
Are they Yeah, I would think that dogs and cats would be conscious, like, but not to the level that you and I are.
Just keep this table set because it'll
Yeah.
bang the thing there.
Yeah.
So,
Like I'd assume that there's.
okay, so they're conscious.
Yeah.
Are they aware?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but are they aware by virtue of being conscious?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I'm still not seeing the difference or the need. If consciousness is just an emergent property,
Mm-hmm.
and that allows us to be aware, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the need for an underlying universal conscious or awareness?
What's the need for it?
Yeah.
I don't know what the need is, but apparently it's there.
I'm just wondering how are you getting there, though?
I mean,
Like-
does any of this exist, right? Like, are we having a conversation right now?
Well, I would have to say that we are,
Well, how do you know?
because I'm aware of it.
Well, there you go.
But that I don't see that as anything independent of my physical being.
Okay.
Like it's like you're adding.
Right. Yeah.
It's like there's an equation here.
Yeah.
1 + 1 = 2, and you're saying, well, 1 + 1 + 0 = 2. You're adding a figure in there that doesn't actually impact the outcome at all. You know what I mean? So saying it's a person and a person plus this underlying universal awareness = 2. What is it actually contributing to our appreciation or understanding of reality?
I'm not sure I follow.
Well, okay. What if we can be aware and conscious, just as beings, as emergent property of our brains?
Yeah.
What is the need to even speculate on an underlying universal awareness?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so what is the need to do so?
Well, you're asking me?
Yeah.
I'm not saying there is a need.
Well, okay, but you have a belief,
Yeah.
right, that there's an underlying universal awareness, right?
Yeah.
What is the need for it if it could? And just speculating, this is not necessarily the case. I'm just trying to see how you're getting there.
Well, if there's a need, I think a pretty good need for it might be just what I was talking about before. It's like if you don't believe it, you don't believe anything exists, and then you get trapped in this cycle of just like, I don't exist. Who is it that thinks I don't exist? how can that one exist if I don't exist? You know, and so if you assume
I'm
awareness, at least you can sidestep that whole crazy mess.
I just don't understand. I don't know why that's necessary.
Oh, I'm not saying it's necessary.
Okay. What are you saying?
I'm just saying that we're here having this conversation, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
But why does that require a universal awareness?
Why does it require
maybe I'm just going in
universal-
circles here. Sorry, but I'm just. Like,
I mean, it requires awareness because
Okay.
it does.
Right.
Like nothing can happen without awareness.
Okay.
Right. Why does it have to be universal?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a whole other thing right there, right? Why does it have to be universal? I don't know, but it seems to be the way it is.
Okay. For people?
Well, for people who meditate very deeply. I mean, you get people who not only meditate but sometimes take powerful drugs. They'll talk about these experiences where like their body disappears, and time disappears, and their thoughts disappear, and all phenomena disappear, but there's still an awareness, right? So I think that's sort of where I'm getting this.
Okay.
This idea is a concept. That
Okay.
makes sense. Like it still just fundamentally makes sense to me as a tautology, right? But on top of that, you hear these stories of people having these experiences of, I guess you could say, universal awareness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you say that they're accurate?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how would you know?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. So what leads you to say that you think they'd be accurate if you have no way of demonstrating that they are or aren't?
Like I've had my own experiences that are something like that, you know, not to that degree, but to a degree. Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, my own experiences along with what I've read and heard sort of lead me to suspect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, being alive and,
Yeah.
and being conscious and aware, when you stop being alive,
Yeah.
what happens to your awareness?
What happens to your awareness? I think this is just my thought, and don't.
I'm making
by
no
the way,
judgments
I'm
here.
not.
No judgment.
You know, I'm not. This is not some belief that I'm going to cling to and try desperately to defend. But I would suspect simply that it just stops being my awareness. Like I don't think awareness stops, but like this stops. Like Brady Ealer stops.
Right.
You know?
Right.
My experience of the world stops.
Right. So what form then do you think you're?
No form.
No form at
No
all.
form.
So when you stop being aware,
When
you stop
being,
living,
yeah. When I stop being conscious, you could say.
yeah, you stop being aware as Brady.
Yeah.
Do you transition into some other kind of awareness?
I have no idea.
Okay.
That's the great mystery, isn't it?
Uh-huh. Yeah, and you know, that's certainly where I was trying to unpack what you meant by this, because you know, I'm trying to sort of discern what what that core belief is, and why it's important, and why you get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
it's not because I'm clinging to some idea of immortality or life
Okay.
after death.
okay,
I mean, certainly that would probably be nice, but
yeah. Well, yeah,
But
it
it's
would be a
not.
nice
It's
thing.
not a fear-based belief.
Okay.
At least I don't think it is. Maybe deep down in my psyche somewhere.
Right. Were you raised in a religious context?
No.
No. Are your parents?
No.
No. So how would you characterize yourself then? If you could put a name and a label on yourself, what would it be? Would it be agnostic, atheist?
Maybe agnostic, I guess.
Okay.
Like I identify a lot with Buddhist teachings.
Okay.
Like, but I'm a little bit remiss to call myself a Buddhist.
Okay.
No, but I certainly enjoy those teachings.
Uh-huh.
Find them of very high quality, and I mean the original teachings.
Okay. So what would be your sort of favorite tenet of Buddhism that really has the biggest appeal to you?
Okay, so like in Buddhism, they've got these four teachings, I should say, and that I just think are just beautiful and elegant, right? So you've got the four teachings of Buddhism, which are morality, concentration, wisdom, and morality. Right?
Okay, you said morality twice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's by living a moral life, you're able to concentrate better, right? And if you develop this ability to concentrate better, you're able to see the world as it is with wisdom, right? And the better you can see the world as it is, the more that sort of informs your morality. So it sort of creates the circle.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So where do you get morality from?
Well, what the Buddha said about this was really great. He says basically that you know a moral action by its fruit, right? So if a good result comes from your action, then that was a good action. If a bad result comes from your action, that was a bad action. That's how you know. He doesn't prescribe it A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
things that are of general benefit to people are good moral actions, and those things that either adversely affect me or you in their performance are bad moral choices, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's the appeal of Buddhism?
Yeah, that's for me it is. Yeah.
Okay. Now, is it possible that those things actually exist independent of a spiritual context?
Independent of a spiritual context,
because Buddhism there's an element of spirituality. That's
sure. I mean,
right?
like, depending on how you approach it, right? I mean, from one perspective, nothing is outside of the spiritual context.
That's assuming there's a spirit, right?
Yeah.
Again, that's that's
But
presupposing.
to me, just drawing back to our whole conversation on awareness. Awareness is spirit. That's what it means.
Oh, okay. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got there, because I wasn't. I was thinking that's where you were going with it, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to put words in your mouth.
Right.
So you're identifying this universal awareness as spirit.
You can. I think. Well, I usually don't say that, but I think a lot of people use it in that way, and that's certainly how I understand it.
Mm-hmm. And how can you be certain that this thing called spirit actually exists?
Well, I think we covered that ground pretty well. I mean, if you can't verify that, you can't verify anything. Right? It's the ground of being. Right?
I'm not sure that it is. I mean, I've struggled to get to this idea that spirit actually exists, but
when
I
say spirit, I mean awareness. That's what I mean.
Okay.
In just the ways that we just
Right.
labored to try and define.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Did it help clarify for you what you mean by it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was fun.
And are you, do you feel like maybe you're a little closer to a firm belief, or are you, like, where would you sort of gauge yourself with respect to your understanding of your own ideas about this?
I mean, honestly, like it gets super esoteric, and I wouldn't be really comfortable communicating my beliefs about it in a public forum, just because I don't have the tools, I don't have the words to really express it.
Right.
But yeah, I think this was fun.
Good.
I think
Right on.
if nothing else, we had an interesting conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool.
All right.
Thanks so much, and.